Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course, a whole lot of opinions about Brandon's works and the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me is Ian.
Hey, I'm your writer.
Also joining us is Evgeni.
Hi, I usually go by Argent on the forums, and for today's show and tell, I have a very brief show and tell because we have a lot of creme to talk about.
Yeah. This is going to be 2 episodes, by the way.
Yeah. So, I received this box that says
dice.
Mistborn metal dice on it, and
I have some of those. They're over here.
It looks kind of like that.
Nice.
So obviously you're not going to be able to see anything because this is super exposed.
We have lights now, so yeah.
Yeah, that was a mistake. But hopefully you can see this. Shiny, very rainbowy.
We've shown those off before.
Yeah, that's when you got
I have them.
like the sampler thing.
Yeah.
But this is now the real deal. So I'm Argent, and I'm here to talk about things.
Great. Also joining us is Joshua. What's up?
Hey, I'm jofwu on the forums, and I thought I didn't have a show and tell, but we got Tivnik the other day. And I needed to. I convinced my wife was decorating this room with plants, and I convinced her to get some grass in a pot.
I was just curious why you were reaching up towards the ceiling. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's up there. It's on a shelf.
Okay, all right. This is acceptable. Also, we got Marvin. What's up?
I'm Paleo, and quite fittingly to that edge metal or harmonium dice that Argent has, I got a new phone and with a new case and stuff, and so I had to try something new with my laser engraver.
Oh, did you get an 8T? Yeah, you got the 8T. Yeah. And went for the ferricami symbol of harmonium. Yes. And also looking absolutely fabulous with a wonderful friend on your microphone stand and awesome hair. We got Rosemary. What's up?
Hi, I'm Kaymyth, and this is another little friend that I crocheted. He is the dread Mistcorn.
The Mistcorn.
Yes. Is the crochet version of a costume that I actually wore to Jordan Con one year. And
when we could go to cons and things, that was nice.
Yeah, I miss that.
Wow.
Anyway, someday we will have Jordan Con again, and this little guy is destined for the charity auction.
Yeah.
Ooh, don't you want to bid?
Yeah, I think the only episodes you were on were that Jordan Con 2018, so it's been a hot bit. Nearly 3 years, I guess. So
no, I'm here for reals.
You're here for reals.
It was a good con.
Yeah.
I finally got my Discord to work with video.
Yeah, this Discord is great, but sometimes it is not great. All right. So I am Chaos, and we're going to be talking about Fabrials today. And so, Rhythm of War spoilers, for sure. Heaps of those. Dawnshard spoilers. Mistborn, really everything spoilers. We're getting so deep in the weeds, but like, especially Rhythm of War and Dawnshard, so, you know.
All of the spoilers ever.
I think it's possible that we won't have Warbreaker spoilers, but I can't guarantee that.
Yeah, I can't guarantee that. Yeah.
Someone needs to accept that challenge.
What if we talk about Intent and Command? That sounds fun, right?
I mean.
All right. Well, how about we start with talking about what we knew of Fabrials before Rhythm of War and Dawnshard, I guess.
So much less than we do now.
That's true.
They were so much less confusing too.
I don't know about that.
Let me take this from the very beginning. Adonalsium was the god of
there we go. I was like, are we going to start with the last desolation, like literally at the prelude? But you went way further back.
Could, if you really wanted to go back to the beginning, you could have started with Brandon Sanderson's birth.
Yeah. Okay. So, Fabrials, at least so far in the Cosmere, is a term for Magitech specific to Fabrial, specific to Roshar.
Wow. This is going great already.
And the gist of it is that you can trap spren in gems, and then using specific metals, you can induce specific effects from the spren. So, some of the most, yes?
We did not know that about metals before Rhythm of War.
We didn't know that the metals were important, and we didn't know the different metals did the thing, but we knew that they had metal cages.
Yes.
That's true.
So, one of the most common examples given left and right is the heating fabrials, or the heat reals, where you trap a flame spren in a gem. I think it's ruby specifically, but that's not important for the example. And then you can kind of prod the spren, and it gives off heat.
Yeah,
that's the most basic definition of fabrials. Now there are different types of fabrials that artifabrians or fabrial scientists kind of divide all fabrials in. So you have pairing fabrials, which are conjoiners and reversers.
You'll see those in span reads, right?
Yes.
I've gotta pair those.
You essentially connect two halves of a spren in two gems together, and when one moves forward, the other one moves forward in the case of conjoiners, or when one moves forward, the other one moves backwards in the case of reversers.
Right.
We have other things like the alerters, which allow you to kind of get an alert when something's happening or when somebody's coming close.
Get a notification.
I almost said notification, by the way.
I'll swipe that away. Swipe that spread away.
And the final category that is kind of well known and understood by artifabrians is the augmenters. And is it augmenters and diminishers, or are diminishers a type of augmenters?
Augmenters and diminishers. They're altering fabrials is the
Yes. And with them, the deal is, well, instead of the effect that is being induced is either an amplification or a diminishing of a specific property. So a common example is a pain real, or a pain fabrial that Navani has, that she can use to either lessen the feeling of pain in herself, or in that one example in like the Way of Kings or whatever in Renarin, or she can induce a large amount of pain in somebody else by stabbing them with the fabrial.
What was that fabrial type that was at the end of Words of Radiance that's still not in the Ars Arcanum?
Those would be the attracting fabrials.
Yeah.
Right.
Which do show up a little earlier in Words of Radiance.
Right.
But they are still not in the Ars Arcanum. Much to my
Come on, Chris. Get on it.
Get on it.
But yeah, that's pretty much fabrials. As
Great.
a disclaimer,
all right, let's get out of here. Bye. Let's do Who's That Cosmere. We're done. Thanks for coming.
As a disclaimer, the term fabrial will probably become a kind of a general term for Magitech in the future in the Cosmere, or so Brandon wants. So while for now they're specific to Roshar, it would not be surprising to see like the allomantic grenade that we see in Era 2 get referred to as a fabrial.
I mean, a Rosharan would look at the metallic arts medallions, and they would say, "Oh, hey, look, it's a fabrial that uses slightly different magic."
Yeah, they're just terrible with names, though.
It's a friend. You're a friend. Everything's a friend.
I want to circle back to that actually about the Ars Arcanum. That actually kind of dates the Ars Arcanum for us, doesn't it? Like I got the sense that when she's writing it, she's saying these are the ones that are known and used on Roshar as I'm writing this, and so it's interesting to me that
but like
it
they
pins the date of
reference
the Ars
Anti
Arcanum.
Investiture at the end of this slot.
Yeah, like the only reason they're not in the Ars Arcanum is because Brandon keeps forgetting to put them in, not because of a deeper reason.
Well, but so it's possible that the section on like anti-investiture and stuff is so it's possible that the entire Ars Arcanum of Stormlight is kind of contemporary, and so Chris is writing it as the books are kind of coming out, essentially, right? And so she has written the sections on like pairing fabrials and alerters and soulcasters back kind of before the events of the books, and then just hasn't updated that with the attractors. But we are now getting a section on stone shaping and anti-investiture and things like that. You can rationalize this stuff if you really wanted
The power of rationalization. Very powerful in the Cosmere. Cool.
Right.
So, now in Rhythm of War, though, we learned just a touch about fabrials. Just a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah. So probably the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go through the part 1 epigraphs. I know people were asking for more epigraph stuff, which we did in more Oathbringer times and less here, but we're gonna talk about the epigraphs as they're relevant. So we're gonna go over here. We're gonna go talk all through the part 1 epigraphs. So if you missed rhythm previews, that's not a problem. We're gonna go through them all now with all the information that we know now and talk about them.
So Navani gives the speech to the Coalition of Monarchs, and she begins. First, you must get a spren to approach. The type of gemstone is relevant. Some spren are naturally more intrigued by certain gemstones. In addition, it is essential to calm the spren with something it knows and loves. A good fire for a flame spren, for example, is a must.
So lull it into a false sense of security. And then
A good blackthorn for an unmade.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
Yeah.
thinking with with the
And
thrill.
I like that the type of gemstone is relevant.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if this gets into essential theory with like rubies are used to capture flame spren because rubies are the gemstone associated with the essence of spark, which is fire.
Right. There's probably a
Yeah.
lot of stuff like that, I'm sure.
I would not be surprised. Let's do the next one then.
Yep.
Next, let the spren inspect your trap. The gemstones must not be fully infused, but also cannot be fully done. Experiments have concluded that 70% of maximum stormlight capacity works best. If you have done your work correctly, the spren will become fascinated by its soon-to-be prison. It will dance around the stone, peek at it, float around it.
That makes sense. That like if it's fully infused, then like you couldn't get
There's
more
no room.
investiture,
Yeah.
right? So that kind of makes
And
sense.
and you need the Stormlight to even like the spren one Stormlight, so you need
need
some in
some
it
sort
too.
of-
Yeah.
I'm
And so-
curious as to how they measure how much stormlight is in there. Do they just guesstimate by, oh, it's this bright? Or how do they do that?
It might just be like the timing, right? Like if they know that how
Mhm.
fast they
Mhm.
leak, then
Yeah.
I don't. It's also interesting to me that it's a percentage, like so it's not an absolute amount of like the gym needs like X units of investiture
Sure.
of space because it's like a smaller gym. 70% is different than a bigger gym.
Yeah.
But I feel like just thinking about the thrill, you needed a reasonably sized gem, right? that had certain prerequisites. So like there might be some variance with the bigger gems, perhaps, as opposed to these smaller ones that they're typically using.
Though that might be more because it's an unmade and it is so
Right.
massive that
Yeah.
for like an ordinary spren, it doesn't matter. Like with hemalurgic spikes, the size generally doesn't matter,
Right.
because the charge of investiture like isn't big enough to fill it. Like
Right.
The number 3, the final step in capturing the spren is the most tricky, as you must remove the stormlight from the gemstone. The specific techniques employed by each Artifabrian guild are closely guarded secrets, entrusted only to their most senior members. The easiest method would be to use a larkin, a type of crimling that feasts on stormlight. That would be wonderful and convenient if the creatures weren't now almost entirely extinct. The wars in Neemia were in part over these seemingly innocent creatures.
A lot going on here. For one thing, obviously, we know when you read the book about the tuning forks, right? So that's
Yep.
what
Mhm.
they're doing.
Which
This is the
means
first step.
this dates this lecture like it is before the capturing of Eurythia.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
right.
saying.
Yeah,
yes,
for sure.
yeah.
I think it's like 2 months before.
Yeah.
That's
the
the very
beginning of-
beginning of the year. So
Yeah.
This is I think this is the most. This is the first epigraph I think where we're like learning something particularly new.
Right.
Mhm.
With the fact that they have to remove the stormlight to capture the spren. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I guess she explains in a minute though. I guess the reasoning for that it makes sense, but it's kind of weird.
Yeah. It's kind of like a weird magical pressure differential type of thing.
Yeah.
Suction effect.
Interesting about the Larkin, because like given Dawn Shard, right? They're related to the Lancerin, right? And that there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with the Larkin that we don't quite know.
It makes me wonder how bad Navani wants to like take Rizen's Larkin. Like,
yeah, I mean, she
would
was
be really useful to me.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's move on to the fourth epigraph. To draw Stormlight out of a gemstone, I use the Arnist method. Several large empty gemstones are brought close to the infused one while the Spren is inspecting it. Stormlight is slowly absorbed from a small gemstone by a very large gemstone of the same type, and several together can draw the light out quickly. The method's limitation is, of course, the fact that you need not merely acquire one gemstone for your Fabrial, but several larger ones to withdraw the Stormlight. Other methods must exist, as proven by the extremely large gemstone Fabrials created by the Ristel Guild out of Canada.
Nailed it.
If Her Majesty would please repeat my request to the Guild, this secret is of vital importance to the war effort.
Yep.
So
that
I mean
that makes sense as a method, right?
Yeah.
Tuning forks much more efficient.
Like can really work.
Yeah.
And I do find it interesting that it has to be a gemstone of the same type.
Yeah,
Any
that's true.
gemstone won't work.
Yeah, that is an excellent point, because even later on when Navani was running around with the two Thalen Artifabrians and they were trying to like get to the first node, she was asking for like I think it was a topaz or a sapphire in the door on the way to the node, and she was asking for more gems of that type, which means it is not just essential for like capturing the Spren, but also it means that Stormlight just doesn't transfer naturally between gems of different types.
Yeah, that's true.
And I wonder, I don't remember too clearly about the tuning fork, but is it possible they use a different note per type of gemstone? Like there's some sort of different frequency resonance per gem that absorbs?
But maybe you have a gemstone, like you have to have a gemstone of the same type because sort of the gemstone naturally vibrates. Like the tone, the Stormlight tone is only compatible between the gems.
It could have something to do with partials too, which you get into musicology, and every note you hear has a bunch of other notes hidden in it. So maybe the tuning fork covers the full range of partials, but each gemstone is tuned to a different partial within the note.
Yeah, that would actually make a lot of sense.
Interesting.
Because even so in that scene and later on when Navani is playing with tuning forks and like transferring Stormlight and Void Light and Life Light between gems, what is essential is that like she makes the entire gem either containing the light she's interested in or the one that she wants to like move the light into. She's making the entire gem like you hit the tuning fork and the fork vibrates at a frequency specific to the light you want to work with or specific to the shard the light is associated with.
Right.
And then you touch the gem, and that makes the fork and the gem vibrate at the same frequency, which facilitates like you can grab the light from the gem with the fork, and then you just kind of move the fork through the air because the frequency is maintained. And then when you touch the recipient gem, you now have an entire system where the source gem, the fork, the light, and the recipient gem are all vibrating in the same frequency, and that allows the transfer. But I can see how a tuning fork might just override these like weak natural partials that each gem is associated with.
Yeah, it's like passive transfer versus active transfer. And active transfer can overcome the separate gem restriction.
Yeah, because that's just really interesting, right? Because there's something about the gems that hold this light, right? And so you wouldn't want the gems to just like leak out Stormlight more than it has to in a way. So it's just interesting that two gems of the same type, almost like some sympathetic thing. Is the same almost. I don't know.
They're connected in the spiritual realm.
Yeah, this is a spiritual color. Yeah, there you go.
All rubies are one ruby in the spiritual realm.
That's the spiritual integrity of the gemstones.
Yeah. Yep.
That cursed phrase.
Yep.
Do we know, have we asked Brendan if gemstones can hold other types of investiture as well, or is it specific to lights?
Not in as many words.
I don't think we've asked that. I would assume if you get any investiture in the form that is kind of like in these light things, then gemstones can absorb it. But like the myths are kind of weird. They're not like exactly analogous, but similar.
And the breath is also kind of weird, but not exactly.
Yeah.
Is the Weiry device they have in like lasting integrity, is that using gemstones? Because like if the Weiry store investiture in that are using that device and it uses gemstones, they probably don't use it for Stormlight mainly. They use it for like the door. So
it is a large gemstone that they have.
Yeah.
Or possibly even multiple. I don't remember. But I distinctly remember, I think, a yellow gem. And so I don't know if it's like a topaz or a heliodor, but it's probably a heliodor because that's what alerted.
In the alerter, it's that's a heliodor probably.
That's interesting because other than Roshar, we don't really have people holding lots of investiture in a sense. Like, metal mines hold investiture, but like there's a lot of prerequisites. This is much more of a, you don't need to be like have the specific.
Breaths.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that breaths are kind of weird, maybe just because they're sticky. Whereas,
And the breaths are attached to a person, and with metal mines, it's attached to the identity of a person. You don't have any other places where people are just walking around with cups of investiture.
Yeah, right. Right.
That we know of.
Free investiture. Yeah, that we know of.
It's not exactly that money grows on trees on Roshar, but almost, right?
Well, how they get those gemstones?
It grows in the animals.
Yeah. You're up next, Rosemary.
Ah, yes. If the stormlight in a gemstone is withdrawn quickly enough, a nearby spren can be sucked into the gemstone. This is caused by a similar effect to a pressure differential created by the sudden withdrawal of stormlight, though the science of the two phenomena are not identical. You will be left with a captured spren to be manipulated as you see fit.
That's interesting because you do need to infuse the gems later, right? Like, don't you?
Infuse which gems?
The gem that the spren is in.
Oh.
Right?
It requires Stormlight to like do work.
Yeah.
Once the spren is in there, it's stuck. It's a matter of getting the spren inside.
Yeah.
Once it's in there, you can shove as much stormlight as will fit, and the spren's still stuck.
Interesting. That's just making me think about like how would spren escape, and it doesn't seem like you can really.
A cracked gem will allow the spren to escape in the same way that it allows stormlight to escape. In fact, there was a section later on when Navani was talking about that, and I think the way she explained it was by saying that while the crystal lattice of the gem is still mostly intact, there's like quote unquote not enough room for investiture or spren, which is investiture, to leave. But when you break the lattice, it allows for the investiture axis, although I don't think they use axis in the context of investiture.
Yes, that's right.
To like leak out.
I wonder if there's any way to get a spren out without breaking the gem.
Yeah.
The dagger.
Yep. Rasium.
Yeah.
So
without destroying the gem, or destroying this poor spren.
And that's what they did, right? To get the like conjoiner fabrial into the larger one.
Yeah. So you need a pipe to funnel the spren out.
That is like a straw, really stick it in there and slurp.
It's interesting that the gemstone is like a one-way. Like it can go in, but it can't get out.
The metaphor I'm using in my head is how little kids like to put their head through railing stairs, and they can get in there, but they can't get back out.
They're not a cat. They can't get out.
And like actually, it has to do with like the crystal lattice and stuff. Like, and you have to the more perfect the cut is of a gem, the more perfectly it can hold storm and presumably also a spren.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's I'm very like maybe it's sort of because it's reflecting into like at least the light would be reflecting internally and like get reflected back into the gem rather than having a way to escape somehow. And so maybe it has something to do with that. Like it's just so stable and things that like I don't know like crystal stuff so much, but maybe it's something like that.
It's making me think about how to free bod a Mishram, right? Like it clearly must be possible, right? But like otherwise, if it was impossible to get an unmade out of a gem, then they wouldn't need to hide the thrill, right?
Right.
So
I mean,
presumably
they can just crack the gem, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
One thing that is interesting to me now that we're talking about this is that so to get a spren in a gem, you create a pressure differential, right? So the pressure, quote unquote, caused by the spren outside is, let's say, roughly equal to the pressure caused by the light inside the gem. And so when you rapidly drop the pressure inside, that sucks the spren in. And so I wonder, can you do the same thing to draw the spren out? So without cracking the gem, without using rasium to slurp it out, engineer a situation where you now have a spren and a gem, and then using radiance or Larkin or whatever, you create a similar quote unquote magical like investiture pressure around the gem, right? And then you rapidly drop that pressure by, let's say, having a radiant draw the light or whatever, and then will that suck the spren out?
I think that's a possibility. Though, like, Brennan does give himself the out of, like, the science of the two phenomena are not identical. This could be the situation where it's like, yeah, like, it works one way, but not the other.
Well, I think that it would make sense that it wouldn't be as easy, right? Because the gem is, like, trapping the spren, right? Whereas if the spren's just floating around, like, that's not really a problem to deal with. So I feel like you'd almost need more of a pressure differential to get it out, in my opinion, just to overcome it being in the gem.
Yeah, because
Perhaps.
like to get the spren in, like the spren is already interested in the stormlight in the gem, and like it moves towards the gem almost already, so it can be sucked in more easily. But maybe it's less interested in getting out, I guess. Maybe we don't know what a spren inside a gemstone feels, but
yeah, right, exactly.
It could be that it's like perfectly fine being in there, so it wouldn't be, I don't know, in the right position to get sucked out there. I don't know.
Interesting. Number 6. With a captured spren, you may begin designing a proper fabrial. It is a closely guarded secret of artifabrians that spren, when trapped, respond to different types of metals in different ways. A wire housing for the fabrial is called a cage. It is essential to controlling the device. Now we're getting into some new stuff, that's for sure.
Yep.
Dun, dun, dun.
But you mentioned, Joff, just how like the word cage is that doesn't sound particularly nice for imprisoning the spren and stuff.
Like I don't get the sense that they like in world like they're thinking like, oh, we're caging the spren, but it's kind of a I don't know, ironic, I guess, that they picked that word for what it is.
And it does imply that at least on some level they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they're at least perfectly aware that they are trapping the spren in the gem, so...
But they just don't think that the spren are aware enough that it matters, in a sense.
Yeah. But
and maybe it is, like, maybe they did call it a cage for that reason, because, I don't know. Sorry, and go ahead.
I want to say that, like, using cage to describe metal around gemstones is, like, a normal thing in jewelry.
Oh, maybe.
So like I don't think it's like cage as in keeping an animal trapped. It's like cage as in jewelry term, I think.
Do they?
I don't know. If you're a jeweler, comment below.
Like looking, it sounds like something that would be like reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, I always just kind of
Also-
took it as like it's metal wrapped around the thing. Like it makes sense to call it a cage.
Yeah.
Also Faraday cage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Let's go to the spicy epigraphs.
Hands up. Now we learned the fun stuff.
This is where all of our brains started to melt.
Yep.
What?
The two metals of primary significance are zinc and brass, which allow you to control expression strength. Zinc wires touching the gemstone will cause this brand to inside to more strongly manifest, while brass will cause this brand to withdraw in its power to dim. Remember that a gemstone must be properly infused following this brand's capture.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Drilled holes in the gemstone are ideal for proper use of the cage wires, so long as you don't crack the structure and risk releasing the spread.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. That is interesting that it's not just touching. They're like literally drilling in holes
Yeah.
at times. That's kind of funny.
The illustration from the book titled The Artist Method actually demonstrates what a cage looks like in a very nice way.
Mm-hmm.
But it reminds me of hemalurgy, honestly. Like it needs to penetrate inside to have an effect.
Though in this case, the actual effects are almost 1-to-1 to their elementic
In
powers.
this case, yeah.
Yeah.
Zinc riots,
Which is
brass
not
sues.
true with all of the metals, but
Yeah, because like some kind of use ferrochemy things, and some kind of use the allomancy sort of things, and so it's a little interesting.
I would like to table that discussion for once we read all of the metals, because we're going to need the context.
Yeah,
right?
we are.
Yeah.
What I want to bring up is that so these two are, I think, obviously what the augmenters and the diminishers use.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Although there's another couple of metals later on. I think pewter and tin are a little weird as well. So we'll circle back to that.
Yeah, we will.
It's sort of weird because like the metals more direct, like they affect the spren and the fabrial more than, or like there are two types of applications of the metal. Some affect like the fabrial itself, like it's, I don't know, I guess passive attributes in a way, like it becomes more strong in the case of zinc and brass, but what we'll see in the next epigraph, it actually affects the function. So
yeah, this is just
agreeing that these are augmenters and diminishers because there.
I think they would be necessary for that, but yeah, it does seem like it's not telling you how the spren is manifesting, just the strength of how it is manifesting, like the level of it.
Yeah,
magnitude.
It's the volume gauge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Sure. Yeah, right.
I can't help but wonder what zinc and brass allomancy would do to a spren.
Oh boy!
Directly.
Now we're into it.
Would it do something, or would it?
I don't know. I don't
come
know.
up against the fact that different types of investiture don't play well together.
Right, because they are invested.
All right. But there were wops about like how a singer would like how they would perceive brass and zinc.
Wow.
I think
I don't remember these.
I'd have to look it up, but it might have been bronze. And
I think it's bronze in the context of the rhythms.
If they hear the rhythms, if bronze and stuff,
or rather, can a seeker skilled enough hear the rhythms using bronze? And can you use copper to shield the singer from the rhythms? Is I think the two questions we've had.
Yeah.
There is one that says, would a soother be able to affect a listener tuning a rhythm? And Brand says, yes, they would be able to.
So. I don't know. The question struck me because so zinc and brass are like emotional allomancy. You're, augmenting or diminishing the a person's emotions. And I guess I'm just wondering. It's interesting because these are not emotions, right? Like a flame being stronger is not. There's no emotion there, But it's still a spren, which is a cognitive being. So it's a cognitive and mental being closely connected. So it's interesting that you're augmenting or diminishing a cognitive thing.
I mean, maybe you are affecting its emotions by augmenting and diminishing its enthusiasm in being itself.
Yeah.
So maybe you can soothe a flame spren to be less interested in fire or something like that.
I do think it is important to note that this isn't allomancy.
Right.
That these are getting into the spiritual integrity of the metal.
Yeah.
What
So
does
it's
metals mean?
So it's not Fabrials are using the allomancy metals. It's they're using the same metals that have this certain spiritual attribute that in allomancy produces emotional allomancy, and in Fabrials makes these effects. So they are related, but they're not exactly
the same.
Yeah. In the same way that, or maybe not in the same, but in a similar way to how allomancy and ferrochemy and hemallurgy use the different metals differently. I think we are looking at a kind of a greater framework for all of this. So on Scadrial, we're saying steel is important on Scadrial, and it produces kind of a pushing effect. And here is how it manifests in allomancy. Here's how it manifests in hemallurgy. Here's how it manifests in ferrochemy. And now, once we zoom out and we say, okay, we are no longer just on Scadrial. We're saying metal in general has significance and has a spiritual integrity. And so on Scadrial, it manifests in the metallic arts. And then when you subdivide the metallic arts, there are even more specific manifestations there. But on Roshar, here's a different effect. Maybe on Nalthis, there goes my thing about Warbreaker spoilers.
There you go. We brought it in. Good job. 10 out of 10.
Maybe on Nalthis, where awakening metal requires a very high, heightening, maybe awakening different metals either has different difficulty or different effects or things of that nature.
And with Sing and Brass, you could almost because spren are mostly cognitive entities, and with the metals you can bring them more into the physical, is what manifesting them more means, or manifest them less. They affect the physical less, at least. So you could almost say the cognitive idea of the emotions of a person as sort of getting.
What does manifest mean here?
Yeah.
So that's
I don't think Navani means that kind of manifesting.
Yeah, it's certainly not the Shadesmar manifesting.
Yeah, no, but it affects the physical more strongly, almost what it means. It has more of an effect.
Yeah, so I get what he's saying is that when you use, I'm looking at my when you use zinc, it brings the spren's nature more out of the cognitive and into the physical, and then it's the opposite when you use brass.
Yeah, because it's the most of the spren is in the cognitive in a sense, right? So I mean, yeah, kind of.
Next one.
Let's do one more. A bronze cage can create a warning Fabrial, alerting one to objects or entities nearby. Heliodors are being used for this currently, and there is some good reasoning for this. But other gemstones should be viable.
What is their reasoning?
Navani, what is the good reasoning?
I've got a small theory on this.
Okay.
The only time, at least prior to Rhythm of War, I think the only time we saw this used was to detect other people nearby.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if we've seen it otherwise. Heliodor, the essence associated with Heliodors is meat and flesh. And so I'm wondering if it's we're using this to detect people, living things that are made of meat. And so I wonder if it's associated with the thing you're trying to detect.
On a more Cosmere level, maybe because bondsmith are the connection radiance.
That's just what I was thinking.
And so it's
that's a good thought.
Tapping into the connection of people to other people, sort of, and detecting that somehow, maybe. And like Navani wouldn't know that, but it's like the deeper reason behind it, maybe. That like heliodors are very good for it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So in Way of Kings, one of the Fabrial Navani's notebook pages on Fabrials is the emotion bracelet, which can detect emotions. So it's not just detecting flesh, it's also can be used to detect emotions.
Was that one still Heliodor?
Yeah.
Or was it using a different gem?
So, yeah.
Because if it's detecting emotions, they might be using a different gem to detect different things.
Mm-hmm. It's not explicitly stated on that page, but it's in the Ars Arcanum. It is like, oh, we use Heliodors for alerters, and it doesn't restrict it. There are more alerters than just the things that detect people.
In Secret History, the Fabrial thing, or like the shade detector that the Weiry use, Kelsey describes it as using a goldish metal as a cage and a yellowish gemstone, I think. And I think Heliodors are yellowish, right? So yeah, so it also works.
Heliodors, yes.
Yeah.
Does it say that in the leather bound? That might be something that might have changed in the leather bound. I'm not sure.
Secret History?
Unfortunately, we don't have the Secret History.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm never mind. Forget that. I'm thinking of something else.
I'm very curious to know like what other gemstones to use for this, and like if you want to detect certain things, like you'd probably need some bronze, but would you need some other things, or would you need a different gem?
Yeah. So using just these two data points that we have so far, it appears that zinc and brass, kind of the spiritual integrity of zinc and brass, has to do with enhancing or diminishing cognitive things, maybe. Maybe, right? Because we see it in allomancy where it happens with emotion. We see it in here where it happens with like the spren's innate sprenness. And with bronze, it seems like the core kind of Cosmere effect has to do with, detecting things, right? Because with allomancy, you obviously use bronze to detect allomantic pulses, investiture, right? And in here, you are using it to detect various things.
Yeah. I would only make one minor change to that, and is that I don't think zinc and brass are exclusive to mental things. Like I think it's the spiritual integrity is like in enhancing things or diminishing things, not or like inflaming or subduing. Like those I think are the concepts. I don't necessarily know that it's exclusively cognitive things.
I can get behind that. Yeah.
And
go ahead.
I was going to go into the pairing. Yeah, the allomantic pairings of the metals seem, at least on some level, to be carrying over to the other magic systems, because zinc and brass are still doing the opposite of each other the same way they do in allomancy. So if we take bronze being able to detect things, if they were to experiment with copper, would they be able to come up with ways to hide things?
Yep.
What I was going to ask, and I think so, yeah. And I would say it wouldn't necessarily need to be a Heliodor. It could just be a different type of spren, for people versus emotions.
Yeah, right? I think it's like what is detected does have to do with what kind of spren it is.
Right.
Which makes
the same.
What kind of spren are they using to detect humans?
Which is perfectly reasonable and mirrored by like augmenters, right? Because obviously you don't use just flame spren, and you don't create just heat reals. You can use a variety of different spren, obviously a variety of different metals to like mix and match effects.
The spren gem and cage, and so you could, with any combination, you can do whatever you want, basically, feels like.
The cages in particular are very intricate and very involved, and I think that Brandon has a lot of like leeway there to just sort of make them do whatever he needs them to do by saying, oh, well, the cage is really complicated.
Yeah. I have a question, because it's the example we have is the warning Fabrial that Risen and Wisdom have. Does it explicitly say that it detects humans, or does it explicitly say it detects life forms?
I don't remember.
Because if it's just life forms, it's probably just a captured life spread.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But if it's explicitly humans...
Sure, go and bring logic into this.
Topic of this particular one, if I really like, it flashes as soon as humans or like whatever it detects is nearby, right? And like bronze pulse, you have bronze pulses in Elemency. So I wonder whether I can't remember if like that pulsing is just a way they make it alert, or whether that might actually be related to some sort of pulse or rhythm thing that like signifies what you're actually detecting in some form. If you could interpret it.
I don't think you can interpret much, because Vustim was saying how it's not super useful. Like it doesn't give you the best information, but it's useful to know that, hey, somebody's coming. And even if you don't know whether that person is a bandit or a fellow trader, it's still a useful information to have, and it pays for itself.
Chapter 9 is a pewter cage will cause the spren of your Fabrial to express its attribute in force. A flame spren, for example, will create heat. We call these augmenters. They tend to use Stormlight more quickly than other Fabrials.
Okay, right. So Zinc Brass is not the augmenters.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. But like, I could imagine you could have both pewter and zinc to like create like a lot of heat, right? Like that seems very reasonable, right?
This is how you make a furnace.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep.
So this has actually confused me a little bit, because what is the difference between causing the spren to manifest more strongly and causing it to express its attribute in force?
So it's like the pewter makes it give off heat. Zinc and brass vary the level, but like just zinc and brass on their own aren't going to do anything. It's just like you're saying, like, okay, do something more, but you're not telling it what to do.
Okay,
it's zinc bringing more of the spren's essence into the physical realm versus the pewter just making it stronger.
Yeah. And like you can have augmenters and diminishers, and so using pewter to make an augmenter and then using a lot of zinc to make it a strong augmenter, or then you can flip it to a diminisher and be a strong diminisher. So you wouldn't use a lot of brass to make a strong diminisher. You would still use a lot of zinc because it makes it more strong rather than like the effect is more strong.
Yeah, right. Yes, I would say so.
You can always control the volume of your TV, but if nothing is playing, you can't tell the difference.
Right. Yeah,
that's a good comparison.
Yeah. I find it interesting that it's zinc and brass that are enhancing or not, because those are not the enhancement metals in Allomancy, but you know, that's just an interesting aspect.
One thing that is similar is the fact that pewter burns metal more quickly, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And this uses Stormlight more quickly.
That seems to be, that makes sense. If you're creating heat, you're doing a lot of physical work in a way, right? In the physics sense. So if you need to do a lot of it, you'd presumably need a lot of investiture to directly to convert to work.
You just need more fuel.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep.
Let's move on to the 10th.
Oh boy, this one's spicy.
The 10th.
A tin cage will cause the Fabrial to diminish nearby attributes. A paint rail, for example, can numb paint. Note that advanced designs of cages can use both steel and iron as well, changing the Fabrial's polarity depending on which metals are pushed to touch the gemstone.
And this is where everything we thought we knew went off the rails.
What is polarity?
Who knows?
Okay.
Well, even backing it up just to what tin does. And one of the interesting things about tin and pewter between allomancy and feruchemy is they do almost exactly the same things in the two magic systems. They're about the only metals that are that closely aligned. True. And then you throw them into fabrials like, nope, tin is totally different.
Yeah, that is interesting for sure there. Yeah.
Well, I would contest that a little bit. Because so first of all, I think tin is an alloy of pewter or vice versa.
Pewter is the alloy of tin.
Pewter is an alloy of tin. Yeah, okay. I don't know metal names in English. Element. Sue me.
Welcome to Metallurgy Cast.
Welcome to Metallurgy Cast on Rashar. That's what
Would you like a copy of the periodic table?
I actually had a great copy of the periodic table, but it was not in English. Anyway, so in allomancy, when you look at a metal and its alloy, they produce some kind of complementary effects, right?
Yeah.
The most obvious example is steel and iron push and pull on metals, and with tin and pewter, even though they appear similar in the sense that one enhances your physical strength, the other one enhances your perception, your senses, right? They are like, you could make the argument that they are opposites in the same way that steel and iron are opposites, right? One does the body, the other does the mind, so to speak. And so what is important is not that they are opposites necessarily, but that they are complementary. Mm-hmm. And I think in that sense, they make a lot more sense in fabrial science.
Could almost be like the spiritual integrity thing, sort of being there that pewter externalizes stuff, almost like in some form, and tin internalizes it. Less this internal stuff.
Yeah. This was a subject of much discussion on the Discord.
Yes, it
when
was.
these came out.
Oh, I bet.
Very, very fervent discussions on like the side that this makes absolutely no sense versus like, oh, it does make sense. I lean more on the side that it does make sense. And one of the metaphors, like I don't remember who proposed this first because it's been a while, but it was like pewter allows you to more strongly affect the world. Like it makes you more strong, whereas tin makes it easier for the world to affect you. Whereas like you are sensing things from further away more acutely, that sort of thing. So it's like tin is a pulling metal versus the pushing of pewter. So it's like pewter like pushes the attribute out, tin draws the attribute in.
It's like drawing the pain into the fabrial itself and away from you. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right. I'll buy that.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Took me a bit.
I think it makes sense because of the reason that Argent explained with the way that they're complementary. It is different than allomancy. It's not what I would have expected based on all the others we've read so far.
But I would assume that the alloys and bases, they are paired in fabrial things.
Yeah. I'm curious what you think tin would have made.
I mean, that's
like as soon as I thought like pewter like is for augmenters, I'm like, oh, then like tin obviously needs to be diminishers.
Yeah, right. In that sense, yeah, that's certainly true. Yeah.
Just you start doing with enough different things in different magic systems, they're just never going to align perfectly. Mm-hmm. So you start getting creative, and that's probably what Brandon's been doing and trying to. And we're just trying to follow his thought processes down the rabbit holes that he's probably run through a zillion times by now.
Yeah.
It's important to keep in mind that in some ways, Brandon is also kind of making this up as he goes along, right? And so obviously he's going to try to like build a framework where things are consistent and things make sense. But sometimes you end up with a cognitive metal that stores warmth.
Yeah. Just in general, the ferrochemical metals, the pairings are sometimes just kind of weird.
Yeah.
Because, you have weight versus physical speed. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Mental speed versus warmth. What?
Yeah.
They don't necessarily make a lot of
these are not
sense.
paired at all.
Except for like a few of them. Some of them have good pairings, but some of them just don't.
Like Tin and Pewter are the only ones.
Yeah. Bren wanted like these cool abilities to have that you can have them in ferrochemy, and then he had to put them into some metals.
Yeah, it makes sense because he originally developed ferrochemy as a completely different magic system for a completely different world, and then he added it in to Mistborn later. So he wound up having to shuffle a few things around to make it work. So that it does make sense that it doesn't line up quite as perfectly as maybe my OCD brain thinks it should.
I personally kind of like the fact that it doesn't line up perfectly because then it feels more real that way. Because like nothing in the real, like you always have these scientific principles and it's like, oh, but here's this exception that doesn't fit into our man-made categories.
Yeah. There's always weird exceptions.
So I like that.
Ice floats.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. You're right. Exactly. Yeah. And for very specific, very strange reasons. Yeah.
But those reasons allow life to exist.
Yeah, right. Very important.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Fabrials real quick.
No.
So no, I was gonna talk about the whole steel and iron affecting the polarity.
What if we read the next one and then we talk about steel and iron?
Yeah.
An iron cage will create an attractor, a fabrial that draws specific elements to itself. A properly created smoke fabrial, for example, can gather the smoke of a fire and hold it close. New discoveries lead us to believe it is possible to create a repeller fabrial, but we don't know yet the metal to use to achieve this feat. We know.
Yeah.
Steel?
Obviously steel.
Yeah.
But like, why? But I mean,
okay.
We have advanced knowledge that the Rosharans don't have.
Yeah.
I did see a lot of people on Discord complaining that, like, why wouldn't they know this? Because if they've used steel to do other things, according to the previous epigraph, like, why wouldn't they have tested it? Especially if steel and iron change polarity, like, why wouldn't you have tested steel in the same way? It makes me wonder, I guess, if there's, I don't know, a trick to it that they haven't figured out.
I think people have asked Brandon. In fact, I know people have asked Brandon. And while I'm not entirely satisfied with his response, which is essentially, well, the Rosharans and metallurgy they don't really go hand in hand. Like things that are obvious and intuitive to us, and that would be obvious and intuitive to Scadrians, are not necessarily obvious and intuitive to Rosharans because so much of their technology and culture is tied to not metals, but gems and other stuff.
In elements, or like in all the metallic arts, it's also very important to have for alloys the right percentages.
Yeah, they might not have the right steel percentage, honestly.
So maybe it's right enough to affect the polarity of stuff, but it is not right enough to actually create repellers, if it does create repellers.
Yeah, that's a good point. They may have tried steel and it not worked, but they didn't have quite the right mix. And certain things, like if you have a poor mix of steel and you burn it as an elemencer, it'll kind of work, but it'll also make you feel kind of sick.
Ooh, maybe it's like painful for Spren almost. Ooh, that's some interesting thoughts there. Huh.
So I have a question then. Looking at these two epigraphs that we just read, right? So we talked about pewter and tin and how they either augment or diminish a nearby attribute. And then in epigraph 10, Navani talks about how steel and iron can affect the polarity of that thing, whatever that means. But she talks about it in the context of augmenters and diminishers. And then she goes on and talks about iron creating an attractor. And so do we think that, how do I want to phrase this? So when she talks about iron creating an attractor, does that mean that attraction is kind of one of the directions, one of the polarities, one of the poles that you can apply to augmenters and diminishers? Or is that or does iron essentially have two separate effects, right? One of them is creating an attractor, the other one is flipping the polarity of an existing augmenter or diminisher.
I mean, it's interesting that she used it in direct, the polarity idea in direct usage with pain rails, because we know that pain rails can take pain away and they can inflict pain. And maybe that's where the polarity comes in. You're using iron to pull pain away from someone, flip it over to steel, and it pushes pain into them.
It's like maybe the polarity is like the you have both tin and pewter in the pain rail, and then for some reason you can't just like have one or the other touch it. You have to use steel and iron to, like, when it's pushing iron, the polarity of tin, I guess, would be iron, and because it pulls stuff in. And
it's almost like tin is working more like ferrochemical tin here, in that it can either store or give out pain as a specific, instead of a sense, it's doing it with pain. And you use the iron to pull pain into it, and you use steel to push pain out of it.
I think these are two different effects. Like, I think the polarity sense, iron and steel are working more like zinc and brass, whereas like it's a secondary like modification of like the primary. And then like attractor is like you are using iron as the primary. Because I don't think tin can like push out pain. I think that
which is
is
why you
pewter.
need well, that's why you need the steel and the iron, though.
Yeah, I think it's like the iron and steel might be necessary, like to switch it, like switch like the tin on, and then switch the pewter on. Yeah, so it's like
okay. So let's walk through the pain rail example.
Okay.
Right? Examples are bay. So in the books, what happens is we have two examples of a pain rail being used. One of them is Navani gives a little like crab-looking thing to Renarin, and Renarin clasps it on his shoulder, and his pain goes away. Okay. And then the other example is Navani stabs, I think it was a soldier in Thalen City, and that soldier experiences an excruciating amount of pain, right? And she also does it with Urbanio later on. So let's deconstruct these and see how they might work. So for the diminishing Renarin's pain, she would have needed tin. Yep. Presumably she would have needed a pain spren, right? Assuming that's what pain rails use, but I think that's a reasonable assumption, at least for the sake of the example.
Yes.
So you can reduce pain. Do you need anything else for that fabrial to work? Is I guess what I'm trying to ask. What do you think?
I think if you just wanted it to reduce pain, you wouldn't need anything else.
It's like you probably could add zinc and brass to like affect how much pain you're drawing, but like that's not necessary for the function of reduced pain.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't think that the Renarin Fabrial had iron then?
But did not need to have iron, perhaps.
It did not need it, yeah.
Okay.
I think maybe it probably did. And I'm probably going to stick with that. I'm going to be disagreeing with Weiry, and then we'll just like have to duke it out over the years.
Like, I'm almost wondering if iron and steel, like tin's still reducing an attribute, but it's like, where is it reducing the attribute in a way? Like,
so what like I think in Rhythm of Previous I might have had this theory, but like the polarity is not like a magnet's polarity necessarily, but like light has a polarity as well, right? Like how the wave is rotated sort of, and you can have polarity filters. So maybe steel and iron are like polarity filters in that sense, that like depending on which one is touching the metal or the fabrial, you can like only and sort of the tin and pewter would have opposite polarities, so only one would be let through. Depending on which if you have tin or iron, steel or iron touching the fabrial.
It's possible that like a basic pain rail will only take pain away.
Yeah.
The more advanced ones have to have both iron and steel in it in order to send it one direction or another.
Yeah. But I also think it has to have pewter.
You have to be able to switch it on it. You have to be able to switch modes on it, essentially.
But right now I get what you were trying to get at, Eric. I think like it sort of pulls it away, like because we know that the way that Navani uses the pain rail, she stores her pain in it and then gives it to Raboniel. It's not like she has one fabrial that works like that, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that is explicit. She says she had tested the fabrial on herself, so like she knows the pain that Raboniel must be experiencing right now, but I don't think it's about storage.
Yeah, I don't think it's about storage either.
This isn't like Furukami where it's like, oh, like we are taking the pain from you and we're going to give it to someone else. Like, no, it's like the spren is absorbing pain because it's a diminisher, and then if you use an augmenter, it gives pain, but it's not necessarily like a storage.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because it's coming
we need
from
more examples of how iron and steel work in this way than more than just one type of fabrial.
That's for sure. We really do.
What we need is for Navani to sit down and have a long discussion with Chris.
Well, that's the thing. These epigraphs are some of the most. It's like info dumpy in a way, right? Where Brandon's just like, I'm gonna give you a bunch of magic stuff for you guys who like magic stuff. Have fun.
That's why he puts it in the epigraph, so that people who don't care about that can just skip it. And the rest of us go, yes, give us more.
Yeah. What is polarity? What does that mean?
Okay, what if we try to tackle the other one? What if we try to tackle the attractor that pulls like smoke into itself, or as we see in Words of Radiance, like moisture, right?
Yeah.
So presumably you would need some kind of a gem. Maybe for smoke you need smoke stone. That seems kind of
I believe that's
intuitive,
because we see a smoke attracting fabrial, and I'm 95% sure it is described as having a smoke stone.
Okay, sure. You would then need some kind of a spren, and I don't know what kind of spren you would use for that. Maybe you can reuse a flame spren. Maybe it's a different type. And you need a cage made of iron, right? And so presumably when you poke the spren with the iron, it goes, oh, I need to attract things, right? And the things it attracts are probably dictated by what kind of spren it is, and optionally what kind of gem it is trapped in. So I don't think we need zinc or brass. Maybe you can add that to the cage to make like the attraction more powerful or less powerful, depending on what you want. Because Navani was talking about, hey, we want to attract moisture, but we don't want to attract too much moisture because we're going to drain the blood from the people around us.
Yeah.
Oh, right. That's probably where like zinc is important, right? Like how much you want to do. Yeah.
Yep. And then, so we have iron, we have optionally zinc or brass. How would tin and pewter affect this at all, if at all?
I don't think they do.
I don't think they would in terms of their augmenting and diminishing abilities, but it could be like how iron and steel have reverse polarity or something. They might have like a secondary effect that like, okay, like if they're the primary metal, they have this effect. If you're using it as a modifier, it has this effect, which is actually similar to Aeon Door, where
I'm thinking as well, yeah.
Different Aeons like have different abilities where based off of like where they are in the equation. Like Aeon, I think it's Aeon Ini that like baseline it creates this light that makes you think better, but it can also be used as a linking Aeon to like to link different equations together.
Okay.
I'm like wondering, like, is the primary metal, I would assume, what is primary? You probably just need more contact points with the gem, or like that one is like drilled through the gem and maybe the modifiers are just touching, right? Because these are like pushed to touch the gemstone, whereas there's this drilling mention, right? So
I think it has to do with like the structure of the cage. So it's like I don't think it's an easy like, oh, if it's drilled through, it's the primary. Like I think it's just the structure of the gem. Like drilling might play into that, it might not. But
yeah, because like cage construction is a huge aspect of fabrial science.
It is,
and it has to do with like, well, not only do you want whatever effect you want, but you also want to make sure you don't break the gem. You also want to make sure that when the fabrial is active, the gem doesn't crack under the stress, and the cage plays into that. So a lot of hand wavium you can apply here. But what I'm getting out of this discussion we just had on these two fabrials or fabrial types is that we are kind of leaning towards at least some metals maybe having different function depending on this kind of primary secondary concept that we're floating around. So maybe that's something we would need to like write down and just look at all of them, and so maybe not all metals can be primary or secondary. Maybe it doesn't make sense for zinc or brass to ever be a primary metal, or maybe there's a different fabrial type where zinc and brass can be primary metals. And then other things can augment that as necessary.
Sure. Let's get away from polarity because we're not going to make much progress on here, honestly. Chapter 12's. One of my pleas is for artifabrians to stop shrouding fabrial techniques with so much mystery. Many decoy metals are used in cages, and wires are often plated to look like a different metal with the express intent of confusing those who might try to learn the process through personal study. This might enrich the artifabrian, but it impoverishes us all. This really reminds me of like the Vin's earring situation. It's like, well, it's plated and it's, what metal is it? Whatever we need, things like that.
It's a fun bit of world building. It makes sense that they that they do that. And
Trade secrets.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But it really draws to light the fact that everything they know they learned through trial and error. Yeah. And there's so much more we know about how their magic system works than they do, and it's like, right, please let us have a conversation with you.
It's these percentages for the alloys. There you go.
And this is actually like from the earlier epigraphs where she talks about the methods of drawing out the stormlight, and she actually talked about like they could use radiance for it, but she doesn't really mention it here that they could just use a radiant to draw out the stormlight of gemstone, probably. So that I found a little weird. Like this is after a year of having more radiance around. Why doesn't she bring that up here? Like it's sort of weird because it would seem the natural idea to me. Yeah.
I think they are aware that they can use that, and she doesn't bring it up because it's just not the traditional way, and you also kind of need to have a radiant around all the time, and they probably have more important things to do, like draw bridgemen and stuff.
Sometimes, your Aethera gets captured, and you can't use your radiance very well to do these things.
And it's like Lirin still serves a purpose as a soldier, even though there are healing radiants. Like relatively, there are few radiants.
True.
There are many more artifabrians.
Yeah.
Or at least, like, once you have a design, someone can, like, just continually do that process.
Yeah.
And create a ton of pain reels or whatever, right?
It may have been nice for her to like do a throwaway mention of, obviously the easiest way would be to use a Larkin, but they're dead. Obviously you can always use a Radiant, but they are, busy. While not dead, they're often busy. So here's how we've been doing things historically.
True. Yeah.
Meh.
We also may have a somewhat abridged version of her speech.
I imagine we do.
Yeah.
Because weren't there like multiple lectures in a way? Because it's like Navani's lectures, plural.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's Navani's lecture on like fabrial mechanics or whatever it was.
Yeah, but this is still what we have here. It's a pretty damn short lecture, so there's probably more.
Yeah,
It's a
Q&A
short
time will
speech.
be a lot.
Yeah, let's move on. This is not a particularly
No, it
interesting
isn't.
one.
Advanced fabrials are created using several different techniques. Conjoined fabrials require a careful division of the gemstone and the spren inside. If performed correctly, the two halves will continue to behave as a single gemstone. Note that rubies and flame spren are traditional for this purpose, as they have proven the easiest to divide and the quickest in response times. Other types of spren do not split as evenly, as easily, or at all.
Right.
So yeah, this is basically quantum entanglement. Except magic.
Like, what does it mean to split a spren, right? Like, what does that mean?
You've split the spren in half, but it literally has absolutely no idea it's been split in half. Because probably in the cognitive realm, it isn't split.
Or at least in the spiritual.
Yeah, something like that.
Hey, I'm not
in
wrong.
one of the realms, it's still in one piece. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
But
and we have like the seeds of interstellar ansibles here.
Yeah,
but like if those two halves of the spren get released, they will each grow into a spren in their own rights.
Would they?
Yeah,
I believe so. Like, I think that's part of Navani's experiments, because like she trying to figure out how can I put these two halves back together. She comments that like if one is released, they will grow into a full spren.
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
I wonder if there's continued experiments. Do they still mirror each other, or do they become completely independent?
I strongly feel they would become completely independent.
Yeah. And maybe it's sort of like to throw in more quantum physics terms, like it's sort of a superposition of like being split and not being split at the same time, sort of while they're in the gemstone, and then as soon as they're out of the gemstone, that resolves into them being actually split and becoming two entities.
Yeah, I could see how the gemstone would sort of stabilize that connection they have, and then once one of them is out, it kind of they lose that connection with each other.
Capital C connection, right?
That's
there.
right.
Boom. Nice.
As long as you split them with intent, of course.
Oh yes, of course. Capital I.
I do have one question, because it's like she's talking about the benefits of rubies and flame spren.
Yeah.
They're the easiest to divide, which, okay, sure. And the quickest in response time.
That's an interesting line. Like, that almost indicates to me that if you did a span read with a different spren, assuming it's split, like, would it not, like, instantly?
Well, yeah, there will be lag. And in fact, this is, I think, a key point to how Navani was able to figure out that her mystery correspondent.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, there is lag. Yeah,
right?
that's exactly right. Yeah, so it's not instantaneous.
Yeah, and they know that. And apparently they have ways of measuring that, although I don't understand how.
Yeah, that's
apparently
weird.
Like, I don't think that was response time. Like they were measuring the weight of the span.
Right.
So they talk about decay. And what that means is very confusing to me.
Yeah, because I interpreted that as like the farther something like a span read is, it will get heavier the farther away they get.
That's how I read it.
The further away they get?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So like if you have two quills of a span read and they're next to each other, moving one it feels like you're riding with two. Yeah. But if you move one of them to the other end of the world, moving one is gonna feel like you're dragging like a brick. For example.
Like?
Yeah. That is the entire basis of the triangulation effect.
She brings it up. She brings it up in the context of the fourth bridge, and they're talking about having to pull it along with Chols, and how it's unfortunate that the further away apart they are, it's like more work for the Chols, basically.
Yeah.
Wow, I totally forgot all that. I kind of gloss over Fabrial mechanics and details. I'm like, yeah, neat. All right, it does that. Cool.
But it was never going to be instantaneous because Brandon is very, very weary of like introducing FTL before needing to introduce FTL. Like you don't want to break physics until you have to break physics.
I can't remember. Is there a WOB on? Does span reads work? Is it a speed of light thing for span reads?
Well, I'm just wondering what response time means. Like I guess it.
Yeah, I'm imagining a lag in time. So if I move my pin over here and you're really far away, like it's a second later it moves.
I wonder why flames run are the best for that.
I think it's because like flames themselves are not fluid, but like they dance. Like it thematically makes sense to me that a flame could be split easier than.
I agree with the splitting. I don't see how the response time fits into that, but I agree that
flame like moves quickly and so I don't know. It's like thematically it probably is like that's something like just
cool. Brandon, great.
It fits.
It might be like in reverse where like he's been using it that way, and so he's just like now making up a reason like, oh,
yeah, that's probably
using that way because of this.
It's probably true.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think there needs to be a reason for it other than inherently different spren exhibit different response times when split in half and used in span reads, and so Flame spren happened to be the best at this. We're gonna circle back to all of this stuff later, I imagine. Let's talk about something.
By later,
else.
possibly next episode.
Well, depending on
Going
how long
at this rate.
Next 5
we're at
epigraphs
90 minutes right now, so.
Oh yeah, so next episode. Tune in. Anyway, next one. All gemstones leak stormlight at a slow rate, but so long as the crystal structure remains mostly intact, the spren cannot escape. Managing the leakage is important, as many fabrials also lose stormlight through operation. And in fact, earlier on we talked about, or it was mentioned how augmenters tend to consume a lot. Yeah, all of this is tied up in the intricacies of the art. As is understanding one last vital kind of spren, logic spren.
Why don't we just read the next one?
Yeah, that doesn't tell us much other than the rate at which fabrials consume stormlight depends on the fabrial.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it's useful information. Like span reads consume very little.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Let's read about logic spren though.
Logic spren react curiously to imprisonment. Unlike other spren, they do not manifest some attribute. You cannot use them to make heat or to warn of nearby danger or conjoin gemstones. For years, Artifabrians considered them useless. Indeed, experimenting with them was uncommon, since logic spren are rare and difficult to capture. A breakthrough has come in discovering that logic spren will vary the light they radiate based on certain stimuli. For example, if you make the light leak from the gemstone at a controlled rate, the spren will alternate dimming and brightening in a regular pattern. This has led to fabrial clocks. When the gemstone is tapped with certain metals, the light will also change states from bright to dim. This is leading to some very interesting and complex mechanisms.
Huh.
So this is very interesting. And I just want to bring up a wob.
Okay.
That Maury, who was on the Discord, asked. I happen to notice that Aeonini and Aeondor, which is said to represent debate, cleverness, wit, is used to control timing in Aeon sequences. Is this an intentional connection with logic spren, which are drawn to debates, being used for timing in fabrials? Brandon, yes it is. There are a few more connections like this in some of the other magics I hope to be able to get to before too long. It's all connected.
Yeah. It is very satisfying when Brandon is able to make connections like that and they work because like if you just read Elantris or Stormlight, it feels kind of arbitrary that a logic spren or Aeon Ini would control timing like that. But once you read both, you it's the same thing with like the spiritual integrity. If we keep saying that phrase, it's going to make sense one day. I promise you that.
Spiritual mumbo jumbo. Very strong.
Spiritual integrity of the metals, where in different worlds, in different magic systems, metals have like similar properties. And so we are seeing another hint of that, where both on Roshar and on Cell, logic and thought and debate and things like that, when applied to the magic, or when manifested by the magic or whatever, controls or has something to do with timing.
I have a question with this. For example, if you make light leak from a gemstone at a controlled rate, what does that even mean?
You've poked a hole in the gem and it just leaks.
Yeah.
Stormlight.
Yes.
Because it's capital L light, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you have to make the gem leak light, but at a steady rate. Like you can't. I don't know how you would make the rate unsteady, right?
Yeah.
Well,
you can't like have like draw it out. Like if you were to draw it out more quickly, like it would be disrupted. But as long as you just leave the gem alone and have it do its thing, it's going to work. Basically, it's how I read that.
Yeah, and it's also like you're picking the rate at which it is, because it's like just the static decay might not be fast enough for your purposes. So it's like, okay, like here is it so that like every second it's diminishing this much, which is useful for clocks, because like the natural decay like might not line up to a useful time scale.
The thing I've been really wondering about this whole flashing, dimming, brightening light is like how I'm really curious how they mechanically like make use of that. Like, how do you turn like, oh, this light's blinking into like turning a clock?
Yeah. It is a little
weird.
funky. Like you need like a light sensor or something almost.
And maybe that's just an example like she's giving, and like it can cause other like similar things. Like it doesn't have to be a light, but
maybe you need an attractor or something like in.
Oh, sure.
And then like you have, because it's a very advanced technique probably, and so you have to have the brightening of that one gem causes the other to have its effect, and then that attracts a little lever or something, and that makes something tick.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I think my impression was that the logic spren like aspect of the complex Fabrial is there just to provide oscillation.
Yeah. It's a quartz in a quartz clock, basically. That's all it is.
I don't know how clocks work. That's what I'm learning.
I don't.
Clocks are very interesting as someone who had a 3D model one for
okay, I imagine. I imagine they are.
Practically magic.
Yeah.
It is.
Huh.
It is.
Lots of gears. Lots and lots of
Yeah.
So in the long term,
watches are witchcraft. Just saying.
In the long term, like I guess I'm reading this as the computers, right? Like this is like the early stages of computers, and
there are logic sprens, or there can be used for logic gates, probably. But definitely,
but certainly it's like bright, dim, yes,
bits and bytes.
Yep.
Yep. How they're gonna scale things
and have that's a lot of logic spren, but.
Yeah, but so maybe they don't need to, right? I don't want to dig too much into this, but maybe you need like only a handful of logic spren, and like because the problem with our computers is that you need to scale them down very much, because you need a lot of computations and a lot of number crunching. In a magical world, maybe you don't need that many spren. Maybe you can have maybe you can impart more complex operations on like an individual spren. And so instead of needing 1,000 logic gates, you can have like one logic spren that does the work of all of that.
Well, isn't it like with quantum computers, the amount of qubits they have is very low, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like it's super low. Yeah.
So.
And so like those can do lots of crazy things. So maybe our Rosharans with their weird quantum entanglement sort of stuff, they're first to create those quantum computers. Whereas the Scadrians create the regular ones with their metal stuff.
The Scadrians have like cryptography advanced stuff, and so on. The Roshanskas come in and crack it immediately because
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, but it does sort of make me wonder, like, how far you can scale down the gem and still trap a spread in it. Like, if they can go to microscale and like have lots of logic spread captured, or if what the lower bound is, I guess. I guess it's also matters when is a crystal still a crystal and not just
what is a few atoms. What is a crystal?
Four molecule or like 8 molecules in a cube.
How big's a spread?
I mean, moving forward, they might not be capturing Sprint either, though. So they might convince Logic Sprint to turn into microscopic.
Please turn into a computer. That'd be great. Thanks. What's a computer? I don't know either.
You figure it out. You're the Logic Sprint.
Different.
Yeah.
Yep.
But also trying to explain that to something that isn't sapient.
Yeah. I mean, it can't be that much more difficult than soul casting. Fire.
I
mean, it's gonna be mumbo jumbo-y. It's what it's gonna be.
It's gonna be deep mumbo jumbo-y. Yeah.
Let's move on.
My final point of the evening is a discussion of fused weapons. The fused use a variety of fabrial devices to fight radiance. It is obvious from how quickly they fabricate and employed these countermeasures that they have used these in the past.
The simplest fused weapon against us isn't truly a fabrial, but instead a metal that is extremely light and can withstand the blows of a shard blade. This metal resists being soul cast as well. It interferes with a great number of radiant powers. Fortunately, the fused seem unable to create it in great quantities, for they equip only themselves and not their average soldiers with these wonders.
Aluminum.
Aluminum.
That's aluminum. We don't need to talk about it.
It's weird. It has much spiritual integrity, that aluminum.
Yeah. So, like, the fact that they seem unable to create it in great quantities, because it can be created through soul casting, and they have soul casters.
Oh, I guess that is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, you can soul cast something into aluminum, you just can't soul cast it back out again.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it is possible that the Faraim, those ones of alteration, of which Rabonio belongs to, have only very recently started coming back, although they have been the ones to shape Kolinar City, so I don't know how much that is true. But like, it's possible that Navani is working with outdated information. Or what I think is more likely is that for some arbitrary reason, the fused cannot create aluminum themselves.
Alternatively, aluminum can be used against radiance. It could probably also be used against them.
Yeah.
So they don't want anyone else to have the thing that could potentially be dangerous to them.
That's a good point. Thinking that as well.
Because
they don't fully trust the listener.
How would you use that against them? Because like a lot of the fused powers are very physical in nature. Like those ones of the heavens fly, but the way they do combat is very traditionally like physical combat. The magnified ones grow their carapace, and carapace doesn't care about aluminum. Those ones of alteration obviously do care about that, right?
If you stab them with aluminum, they will not heal.
Is that true?
Well, that wound won't heal.
Until you like pull the aluminum out.
Yeah.
Do we know? It seems like the Fanan Im?
Yeah.
There seems like there's not many of them. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It seems like there's some comment somewhere maybe that Vinley makes that there's not very many of the type that Raboniel is. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's just like not a lot of them, and they're just busy doing other stuff. They don't
want us just be soul casting aluminum all day. It's like I got better things to do.
Yeah, they're more effective uses.
Also, we talked about on the surge binding episode. We talked about how we think that the fused use the surges more internally. And if that is the case, then maybe they can't like grab an object and turn it into aluminum. Maybe the way their transformation works. Yeah, but they do.
They do.
So,
They terraformed Kolinar. Yeah, that's weird.
And like
soul casting is very, very externally focused.
you don't want to soul cast
change
You
yourself.
really don't want it internally.
Yeah, yeah.
That'd be bad.
It's funny though that we had so much Raboniel and we're like, we really don't know what our power set, like the full extent of her abilities is.
Apparently, she uses it on the sibling. I guess is what she does as well. So like,
sort of. That's what
maybe.
She, yeah,
I don't know.
it's weird.
It is. Because maybe it's just like also a rationalization from Bren that we don't see more aluminum weapons. Just like I don't know.
I think it would be a liability if they let too much aluminum in the enemy's hands, though. Like we got to see more fused with shard blades, that they capture. That'd be cool.
Yeah, they don't like him though.
I wonder if
because they can also hear the screaming.
Too.
Can they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that like a confirmed thing that they don't like?
Yeah.
That they hear?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When Navani sees Sundraiser in the hands of one of the fused, and she has a conversation with Rabonio, and Rabonio says that her people generally don't use the shard blades because it's pain, unless they are one of the ones who enjoy the pain.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. There's a lot in this book.
Yeah.
All right. The fused have a second metal I find fascinating, a metal that conducts stormlight. The implications for this in the creation of fabrials are astounding. The fused use this metal in conjunction with a rudimentary fabrial, a simple gemstone, but without a spren trapped inside. How they pull stormlight out of a radiant and into the sphere remains baffling. My scholars think they must be employing an investiture differential. If a gemstone is full of stormlight, or I assume void light, and that light is removed quickly, it creates a pressure differential, or a kind of vacuum, in the gemstone. This remains merely a theory. Well,
that's wrong.
So it's racium, odium's god metal, which is crazy. And clearly it's the tone thing, right? Like that's what they're using. So.
Yeah.
Does racium just naturally like draw it out?
Yeah, I think it just draws it.
Yeah.
I mean, Navani's able to use it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember it because one. Right. Yeah, but she could have been used a tuning fork. I don't remember.
I think she like when she takes out the flame spren from the ruby to do her multiplication thing. I think she just pokes it with the dagger. And
you're probably right about that. Yeah.
And like when Marsh kills Yezrin, he doesn't like. There isn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't invoke any specific rhythm or anything. He just stabs him, and the racium does its job.
There's a comment that like the direction of the metal matters, so she has to like take out the dagger and spin it around, and so I got the impression that the metal, by the way, like naturally,
pulls it in a direction.
Yeah.
Why would there be directionality to it? That is weird. I find maybe that's the polarity of racium.
You just have skill there. Such that polarity.
There is some directionality there, like with spren being sucked into gems, but then not being able to leave. Like it's okay for things to have directionality or polarity.
You couldn't have like alternating stormlight current in racium. You could only go one way. You couldn't do the alternating part.
I mean, who knows what you could do with racium? Like, as Navani says, like the implications for this in creating fabrials are astounding. And yeah, I bet it would. Because you could like always have your fabrial clock always charged with stormlight or something. I mean, I guess you'd still need a stormlight source, but
it's a very useful tool.
Mm-hmm. The idea of wires that can like transmit stormlight around seems pretty cool. Yeah. They're never gonna like have enough like quantities of racium to like make much use of it.
It's interesting that it's a god metal that has this function in a sense.
Maybe like we don't know how much control the vessels have over the production of their god metal, but like maybe like Terentian knows Fabrials, like he was a driving force behind the half shards, probably stuff like that. So maybe that's not. I just meant.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
They were invented before he got control of
Yeah, you're
them.
right.
Yeah,
But
All right, there we are.
I do think shards have a fair amount of control about whether or not god metals are being produced. Aethium was a very special case where there was deal trickery and Laras did some tricky things.
It just makes me wonder whether like maybe intervention is like, okay, let's give them some more racism to make nicer, like to the fuse and to the singer side to make cooler fabrials. And yeah,
it's plausible.
Humans could get that as well then, like steal it.
And you can go a long way by like not making your entire fabrial out of racium, but like because like when you use a gold plated cable right now, there's not a whole lot of gold in that cable that you're using. It's a very thin, and so maybe you can do a similar thing where you don't need like a rod of racium to conduct investiture from here to here. You can have like a tube that is just lined with like a millimeter thin or thick just racium sheet, essentially.
Sure.
So to conclude the speech from the best Stormlight character, the world becomes an increasingly dangerous place, and so I come to the crux of my argument. We cannot afford to keep secrets from one another any longer. The Thaylen Artifabrians have private techniques related to how they remove Stormlight from gems and create fabrials around extremely large stones. I beg the Coalition and the good people of Thaylena to acknowledge our collective need. I've taken the first step by opening my research to all scholars. I pray you will see the wisdom in doing the same. And it only takes Erethiru being kind.
Yeah, just
good thing the fused handed that to her.
Oh wait, she was right.
Yeah, I know. I wonder.
Even then, it was like pulling teeth to get them to admit it.
It's like, you're all going to die. Please tell us. Like, oh, I guess. I wonder if the creating fabrials around extremely large stones, like that's why they didn't really explore a lot with the thrill in a fabrial and stuff. Because they didn't.
Oh yeah, that would be difficult, wouldn't it?
I don't know.
Like, you need to make sure you don't crack.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I don't know why extremely large stones would be too much more complicated, but I guess if you involve drilling and stuff, that could be.
It's always a risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like for them, it's also just like at that point, it's also just getting the Stormlight in is a problem because the honest method requires a larger gemstone for the differential.
Right. In
getting
that
it out, so you need an even larger gemstone.
Plus, there's the fact that it's a perfectly cut gemstone, and the instant you start changing that, you could change its nature as a perfect gemstone, and it can no longer hold an unmade.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the gem was already charged. Like we knew that it had been sitting in the treasury for hundreds or however many years.
Long time.
And it had retained its charge. Plus, they had radiance, so they could have pumped light into it. I think the danger is, one, losing an incredibly valuable gem that is one of the very few in existence, and two, letting the thrill go out. You don't want to do that.
Apply to ocean.
Dunk.
Aluminum box. There you go. Wow. Well, I'm not particularly surprised that our part one epigraphs took a while. So we are going to do more fabrials next time. I think it's gonna be we're going back to every other week. So it'll be an additional week wait, but.
We just like to keep you all in suspense.
Yeah. You just can't handle how pedantic we'll be next time. I don't know. I mean, this is probably a lot, but let's go.
Pedant.
Yep. So let's go on to who's that Cosmere character.
this character is from Roshar.
Menace. Tien.
Tom.
Raise.
Void in drag on a horse.
It's time for Who's That Cosmere Character? Caw. All right. You know how the game's played. You send an email with 5 clues and a character to wtcc at 17chart.com. And after each clue, these guys can guess who's that Cosmere character. I'm very interested how Rosemary's going to do. Let's find out. Our first one very dangerously has the answer as the subject line of the email. That is Danger City right there. And this one is sent from Piper Moss. And clue 1, this character is a baker.
Jochi.
It is Jochi. All right, yay! I wasn't sure which clue I should do first, but yeah, I don't think there's a lot of bakers.
Well, that was quite a game, folks.
Yeah, that's Yasna's other Versatalian. Who?
Yeah. It would have been my guess as well. I just wouldn't have remembered the name.
Yeah. All right, we're doing great. We're moving at a good rate. That was
Moving
good.
through.
Look, we got time to make up for. So.
Yeah. Clue 2 is a friend of a more major character. Clue 3 doesn't technically appear on screen. Then clue 4, they're a scholar, and clue 5 lives a double life. Honestly, maybe I should have just reversed all these, to be honest.
I think as long as you put the baker thing last, because there's only 2 bakers in the Cosmere.
Welcome to Let's Criticize Your Cosmere. Thank you, Piper.
I liked it. Thank you, Piper.
Oh, I'm sure. All right. Let's do another one. This one is sent in by Oliver Newcomb.
Queen.
Yeah. Oh boy, this is from June 2020. Oh boy. We're doing great. All right. Clue 1. This character resides outside her homeland.
Silence?
It is not
Silence.
Silence.
No, it's
Yaddle.
It's not
Dang,
Yaddle.
I was going to guess that. I'm glad I didn't.
See, that's a 2 for 1 because we also get gender in there.
That's true.
That's nice.
I know.
I like
it
that.
is nice.
I'll guess lift.
It's not Lift.
Lemex's nurse.
It's true. That is a world hopper, but it's not them.
No, why did I? No.
Outside her homeland. Well, we'll go for the low-hanging fruit here and go with Chris.
Oh, that's true. That is a very good guess, especially with her. But it's not Chris. Clue 2. The character is a government employee.
Cook Mab?
It's not Map. I like that though.
She lived in her homeland, though.
No, she was born in Taitalier with a breath, and then she gave up her breath and then moved to...
Oh, I thought she was Adrian, moved to the city, and then moved back.
Oh, maybe that.
Well, it's not Map anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Shay or Shy?
No.
Why did I say Shay?
Yeah, I know. Get out.
Because you know how it's pronounced. That's why.
No.
I don't like
no,
it.
it's not them.
Okay.
Government official.
Government employee.
That's why I did guess Shy, because she isn't an official, but she was employed by the government.
That's true. I mean, I don't think she was paid per se, so it's like I don't know if there was an employment agreement per se. I mean, I guess what is an employee?
Would you consider Sil in her capacity as the ancient daughter, which is presumably like a princess rank, which is the government official?
But is she employed?
Is that your guess?
No, I already guessed Mab.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right.
I think I know who I want to guess, but I'm trying to drag the name out of my brain.
If you give a sufficiently good description, that will suffice. That is fine.
Yeah, except it's really embarrassing that I can't remember her name.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, yeah. The comments will get you.
Yeah, I'm terrible. Let me see if I can drag it out of my brain.
If only you had if only you could reverse the polarity to push it rather than pull it.
Reverse the polarity, the neutron flow. You know, I had to say that.
How about Tyndall?
It's not Tyndall. I like that though.
Is it
Thought about
Lys,
that.
the assassin?
It is not Lys, the assassin, who may or may not be Chana. We don't know, but I like that theory.
Oh, here we go. Starts with a V.
Vin.
No, it's not Vin. Vathy.
Oh, it's not Vathy. No,
Because I know she works for the government,
it's true.
or at
That's
least
true.
in some capacity.
That's true. Clue 3. This character is Azish.
Hoka or Hauka.
It is Hauka. Oh, Argent kicking butt, taking names, or saying names at least.
Hey, check out my shirt. Check my shirt.
I like exercise because I love it. Well,
Oh, my fabrial brain.
your brain's a fabrial? How many spren are in there?
How many logic spren do you need for that?
4.
4. So clue 4, this character is a fighter, and clue 5, this character served a surge binder as a springboard.
That's a clue.
That is the clue.
Yeah.
I like it. So it is Hauka, and she's Aegis, but isn't a Sheik. Yida.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed us very slowly going through Fabrial stuff, just you wait till next time where we get to even more spicy things that we don't know what's going on. But we know a lot. We know more. Strictly more.
I cannot wait for us to be confused by things such as the suppressing Fabrial, Eurytheru, Soulcasters,
All the things with the ancient
Conjoiners,
Fabrials and stuff.
Aluminum.
Oh no.
Maybe we'll even do a like an honorable mention of half shards.
This feels like a lot to
Half
put in
shards.
the next episode.
We don't know anything.
Yeah.
The
I
end.
like how you told everybody there would not be a part 1 epigraphs because we would just put it into a Fabrial episode.
Well, I mean, technically, it's a series. It's a series, okay, about Fabrials. So technically, we needed to get through the information. All right. Well, you can find us on 17shard.com for all your news, discussion, theories, and fun that you could ever want. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, YouTube. You can leave us a review on iTunes. I haven't checked those in a while, but I'm sure they're good. But you can support us on Patreon. If you make a random comment that has nothing in it, not nothing in it, but if you just like put, this was cool, then the algorithm will like our video more. So you can just put that. Or you can say this sucked, whichever one you like. This is dumb. Yeah, you put this is cool or this is dumb.
But did you use the honest method to suck or another one?
So I learned something recently from a Twitch streamer where he was like, so something a lot of streamers do is they change their look in weird but not like unpleasant ways for themselves. So like this guy's drawing a mustache.
Oh, okay. I was like, weird but not unpleasant.
and so he's like,
their clothes.
and so people are like, why are you drawing this? It looks dumb. He's like, well, so I don't care about the stash, right? I absolutely don't care. However, when I post videos, some people either love it, in which case they post comments.
Yeah, that's true.
Loving it. Some
That's
people
true.
hate it, in which case they post comments saying that they hate it. And some people are confused, in which case they post comments in which they say they're confused. And all of these are engagement.
That's right.
Which is great.
Yeah.
I liked all the
So-
comments about whether being murdered means that you're deposed. There were many comments about that. I'm very pleased. Yeah,
So-
no, this is what you should do. What does polarity mean in that epigraph? Please
God.
tell us. Comment
Yes.
below, because we don't have a clue.
No.
We'd love to know yours. All right. We'll see you next time, which will be 2 weeks from now, where we'll talk more about Fabrials.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Keep your gems infused.
Ka.